Daniel Carter hadn't planned on noticing her. He wasn't the kind of man who noticed things like that anymore. Not after everything. In Manhattan, life moved fast, and Daniel had learned to move faster. Mornings started before sunrise. Packing lunches. Checking homework. Answering emails while flipping pancakes. His 7-year-old daughter Lily was the center of his universe. Everything else existed in the background. Romance? That belonged to another lifetime. A lifetime before custody papers. Before quiet apartments. Before learning how to braid hair by watching YouTube tutorials at midnight. Daniel wasn't bitter. He just didn't have room for distractions. That afternoon, Brooklyn felt softer than usual. The kind of late golden sunlight that made even tired buildings glow. Daniel sat on a wooden bench outside a small corner cafe while Lily chased pigeons across the pavement, her laughter echoing lightly between the brick storefronts. For a moment, he allowed himself to breathe. Just breathe. He rubbed the back of his neck, watching Lily run in circles, her little sneakers squeaking against the sidewalk. She was happy. That's what mattered. That's all that mattered. And then he glanced up. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't dramatic. It was just a glance. But it changed everything. She stood by the cafe window, sunlight catching in her dark hair like it had chosen her specifically. One hand held her phone, the other wrapped loosely around an iced coffee. She laughed at something on the screen, not loudly, not obnoxiously, but with a kind of effortless confidence. The kind of laugh that didn't try to be heard. The kind that just existed. Daniel froze. Not because she was beautiful, though she absolutely was. But because she looked alive. Present. Like someone who hadn't been worn down by disappointment. He didn't realize he was staring. Didn't realize how long he'd been staring. Until she looked up. Their eyes met. And instead of looking away, instead of frowning, instead of giving him the kind of look that says, "Really?" she smirked. A slow, knowing smirk. And then she moved. Each step toward him felt deliberate. Confident. Curious. Daniel's heart did something unfamiliar in his chest. Something that hadn't happened in years. She stopped a few feet in front of him, tilting her head slightly. "Enjoying the view?" she asked. Her voice wasn't sharp. It wasn't accusing. It was playful. But a few people nearby turned their heads anyway. Daniel could have panicked. Most men would have. He could have looked down at his shoes. Mumbled an apology. Blamed it on zoning out. But he didn't. Instead, he smiled. Not cocky. Not embarrassed. Just steady. "Very much," he said calmly. "But I was actually trying to decide if I've seen you here before, or if you just have one of those faces that feels familiar." There was a pause. A subtle shift in her expression. She hadn't expected that. "Oh," she said, crossing her arms lightly. "And which is it?" Daniel held her gaze. "Hopefully the second," he replied softly. "Because I'd like the chance to see it again." The air between them changed. Not electric. Not overwhelming. Just warmer. There was no arrogance in his tone. No rehearsed charm. Just honesty. And somehow, that was more disarming than any pickup line. She studied him now. Really studied him. Late 30s. Light stubble. A tiredness behind his eyes, but not defeat. More like responsibility. Like someone who had learned how to carry weight without complaining about it. Before she could respond, a blur of pink sneakers came racing toward them. "Daddy." Lily wrapped her arms around Daniel's leg, slightly out of breath and glowing with excitement. Daniel instinctively rested his hand on her head. The woman's expression softened immediately. "You're a dad?" she asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. "Best job I've ever had." There was no performance in that statement. No attempt to impress her. Just truth. The woman glanced down at Lily, who was now peeking curiously at her from behind Daniel's side. "And what's your name?" she asked gently. "Lily," she said shyly. "That's beautiful," the woman smiled. Daniel noticed the way she lowered herself slightly to Lily's eye level when she spoke. Small detail. Big meaning. She wasn't annoyed. She wasn't uncomfortable. She wasn't scanning for an exit. She was present. Daniel hadn't realized how rare that felt. The woman straightened and extended her hand. "I'm Ava." Her voice was softer now. Daniel took her hand. "Daniel." Their handshake lingered half a second longer than necessary. Not awkward. Just aware. For the first time in a long time, Daniel felt something unfamiliar rising inside him. Hope. Not the loud, reckless kind. The quiet kind. The kind that whispers instead of shouts. Ava glanced toward the café. "I was just grabbing coffee before heading back to work," she said. "But I have to admit, this is more interesting." Daniel smirked slightly. "Careful. I don't want to ruin your expectations." "Oh, I don't know," she replied. "You handled that pretty well." "Handled what?" "The staring." He laughed under his breath. "Guess I'm out of practice." "With what?" "Talking to someone who isn't under 4 feet tall." She laughed, genuinely this time. And the sound did something to him. It reached places he thought had shut down years ago. Lily tugged on Daniel's sleeve. "Daddy, can she sit with us?" Daniel blinked. Ava raised an eyebrow playfully. "Well," she said. "That sounds like a formal invitation." Daniel looked at Lily. Then back at Ava. "You don't have to," he said calmly. "We don't want to kidnap you from your day." Ava hesitated. She could leave. It would be easier. Safer. A quick, funny interaction with a handsome stranger and his adorable daughter. A story to tell her friends later. But something in Daniel's eyes stopped her. It wasn't need. It wasn't desperation. It was steadiness. And she realized something surprising. She didn't want to leave. 5 minutes, she said. Daniel smiled. "I'll take it." As Ava sat down beside him on the bench, Lily happily resumed chasing pigeons, occasionally glancing back to make sure both adults were still there. Daniel felt the warmth of Ava's shoulder close to his. Close enough to notice. Close enough to matter. Neither of them knew it yet. Not the single dad who had convinced himself love wasn't practical. Not the woman who had grown tired of men who mistook confidence for connection. But that one playful question, enjoying the view, had just shifted the direction of both their lives. And for the first time in years, Daniel allowed himself to imagine that maybe, just maybe, the view was only getting better. 5 minutes turned into 30. Daniel wasn't sure exactly when it happened. Maybe it was the way Ava leaned in when she listened. Maybe it was the way Lily kept including her in every tiny story. Or maybe it was the simple fact that, for the first time in years, conversation felt easy. Not forced. Not strategic. Just easy. They moved from the bench to a small outdoor table near the cafe window. The late afternoon sunlight softened into early evening gold, wrapping the sidewalk in warmth. Lily sat beside them, coloring carefully on a paper placemat the barista had handed her. Every few minutes she'd look up, just to check that both adults were still there. Daniel noticed that. Ava noticed that too. "You don't flirt like most men," Ava said, stirring her latte slowly. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Is that a compliment?" "I haven't decided yet." He smiled faintly. "I'm a little out of practice. With flirting. With anything that isn't related to school schedules or construction deadlines." "So what do you do?" she asked. "I run a small construction firm. Mostly commercial renovations. Offices, retail spaces, sometimes residential." He shrugged lightly. "Nothing glamorous." There's something honest about building things, Ava said. You see the result of your work. Daniel studied her face for a moment. Not everyone appreciates that. She held his gaze. I do. There was something about the way she said it. Not admiration. Not flattery. Understanding. And Daniel hadn't realized how much he missed being understood. A slight breeze passed between them, carrying the scent of coffee and city air. Brooklyn felt quieter now, like the world had slowed just enough to let this moment breathe. So, Ava said gently, how long have you been doing this on your own? Daniel didn't pretend to misunderstand. 5 years, he answered. Ava's fingers stilled around her cup. That's a long time. He nodded once. Lily's mom left when she was 2. He didn't say it bitterly. He didn't say it dramatically. Just fact. She decided motherhood wasn't what she wanted, he continued calmly. And I decided Lily deserved at least one parent who didn't hesitate. Ava's expression softened completely now. I'm sorry. Daniel shrugged lightly. We survived. But even as he said it, there was something behind his eyes. Not pain. Not anger. Exhaustion. The kind that doesn't show in loud ways. The kind that settles deep in the bones after years of holding everything together. Ava watched him closely. You don't talk about it like someone who's angry, she said. I was, he admitted quietly. At first. But anger doesn't pack school lunches. It doesn't show up at parent-teacher meetings. It doesn't sit beside a hospital bed when your kid has a fever. His voice wasn't heavy. It was steady. That kind of anger just wastes time. Ava swallowed. She hadn't expected this depth. Hadn't expected honesty so early. Most first conversations stayed on safe ground. Movies. Jobs. Weather. This felt different. Real. She looked down at her coffee before speaking. I just ended a 5-year relationship, she said softly. Daniel didn't interrupt. He didn't lean in dramatically. He just listened. He wasn't a bad person, she continued. But he was always waiting for something better. A better job. A better city. A better version of me. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. That's exhausting. It is, she nodded. I kept trying to prove I was worth choosing. The words hung in the air between them. Worth choosing. Daniel understood that more than she realized. And one day, Ava said, voice quieter now, I realized I didn't want to be someone's almost. Daniel held her gaze. You shouldn't be. The simplicity of his answer caught her off guard. No hesitation, she asked lightly. None. You don't even know me. I know enough, he said calmly. No one should feel like they're competing to be loved. Ava felt her chest tighten unexpectedly. He wasn't saying it to impress her. He wasn't positioning himself as the hero. He simply believed it. And belief was attractive. Lily suddenly looked up from her coloring. Daddy? Yeah, Peanut. Is Ava your friend? The question froze both adults for half a second. Daniel smiled slowly. I hope so. Ava felt warmth spread through her chest. Yeah, she added gently. I think we're friends. Lily grinned and went back to coloring, satisfied with that answer. Daniel leaned back slightly in his chair. She doesn't get attached easily, he admitted. She's careful. Ava glanced at Lily. Kids always know more than we think. That's what scares me, Daniel replied honestly. Their eyes met again. And this time, something unspoken passed between them. A question. A possibility. Ava shifted slightly in her seat. Are you always this direct? She asked. Daniel considered it. I don't really have time to be anything else. There it was again. Not arrogance. Just clarity. I'm not looking for complicated, he continued. My life's already full. If someone steps into it, It has to make sense. And does this make sense? Ava asked softly. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied her face. The quiet strength in her posture. The intelligence in her eyes. The warmth in the way she interacted with Lily. It feels easy, he finally said. Ava exhaled slowly. Easy is underrated. The sky above them had begun to shift into deeper shades of orange and pink. Evening was approaching, and the city lights flickered on one by one. Daniel checked the time instinctively. I should probably get her home soon, he said reluctantly. Ava nodded. Of course. There was a small pause. The kind where both people are deciding whether to let the moment end, or extend it. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Can I see you again? He asked, steady but sincere. Ava tilted her head slightly. Is that your construction project direct approach? Always. She smiled. I like it. She took his phone and typed in her number before handing it back. There, she said. Now you don't have to rely on destiny. Daniel looked down at the screen. Ava. It felt strangely significant. Lily hopped down from her chair and grabbed Daniel's hand. Bye, Ava. Ava crouched slightly to Lily's level. Bye, Lily. Maybe next time you can show me more of your artwork. Lily beamed. Okay. Daniel stood, their eyes meeting one more time. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For not walking away. Ava's smile softened. Thank you, she replied, for giving me a reason to stay. And as Daniel walked Lily toward the car, he felt something unfamiliar settling in his chest. Not pressure. Not fear. Anticipation. For the first time in years, he wasn't just surviving the day. He was looking forward to tomorrow. And somewhere behind them, Ava stood on the sidewalk watching father and daughter disappear into the evening glow. She hadn't planned on noticing him either. But sometimes, the best things in life begin with 5 unexpected minutes. And the courage to let them turn into more. The second time felt different. Not because the butterflies were gone, but because they weren't. Daniel hadn't expected that. After 5 years of routine, responsibility, and emotional caution, he had trained himself not to anticipate things. Hope could be distracting. And distraction, in his world, had consequences. But when Ava texted him 3 days after their café meeting, there's a small park festival in Williamsburg this weekend. I heard the food trucks are worth the calories. Daniel felt something unfamiliar rise in his chest. Excitement. He stared at the message longer than necessary before replying. Lily's vote counts for 50% of my decisions. I'll ask her. Ava responded instantly. Smart man. Saturday arrived wrapped in clear blue skies and crisp autumn air. The kind of weather that made the city feel softer. Families filled the park, music floated from small speakers near the stage, and colorful tents lined the walkway. Daniel held Lily's hand as they stepped through the entrance. Is Ava coming? Lily asked for the 3rd time. She said she would, Daniel replied, pretending he wasn't scanning the crowd. And then he saw her. Standing near a lemonade stand, sunglasses resting lightly on her head, wearing a simple cream sweater and jeans. Effortless. Confident. Real. She spotted them almost instantly. And she smiled. Not polite. Not distant. Warm. Daniel felt it all the way down to his chest. Hey, she said as they approached. Hey, he replied. Lily didn't hesitate. She ran straight into Ava's arms. Daniel blinked. Ava laughed softly, surprised but happy. Well, that's a good sign, she teased. I told you, Daniel said quietly. She's careful. If she likes you, you're in. Ava looked at him with something deeper in her eyes. That might be the nicest thing anyone's said to me. They walked through the festival together. Lily insisted on face painting. Ava knelt beside her, holding her hand while a small rainbow butterfly was painted on her cheek. Daniel watched from a few steps away. He didn't realize he was smiling until Ava caught him. "What?" she asked playfully. "Nothing," he said. "You just look natural." With face paint supervision. With her. Something flickered between them. Something steady. As they moved toward the food trucks, the atmosphere shifted slightly. Not enough for most people to notice. But Daniel did. Two men standing near a barbecue stand glanced toward them. Whispered something. Laughed. It wasn't loud. But it was intentional. "Man," one of them muttered just loud enough, "didn't think single dads pulled like that." The other chuckled. Ava stiffened almost instantly. Daniel felt it. The slight change in her posture. The discomfort. He had two choices. Ignore it. Or address it. 5 years ago, he might have chosen differently. 5 years ago, ego would have stepped in. But now? Now he thought about Lily. She was right there beside them. Watching. Learning. Daniel calmly stepped closer to Ava and wrapped an arm gently around her waist. Not possessive. Not aggressive. Protective. Grounded. He turned slightly toward the men. "Yeah," Daniel said evenly. "Turns out women like being treated with respect." The laughter stopped. The men shifted awkwardly, suddenly very interested in their phones. The moment lasted only seconds. But it was enough. Daniel didn't glare. Didn't escalate. He simply stood there, steady. Ava looked up at him. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "I know," he replied quietly. "But she's watching." Ava glanced down at Lily, who was now holding her cotton candy and looking between the adults. "She needs to see what standing up looks like," Daniel added. Ava's throat tightened slightly. There was no showmanship in him. No need to dominate the moment. Just clarity. She had dated men who would have started fights. Men who would have laughed along to avoid tension. But Daniel? He chose calm strength. And that was new. They found a quiet bench near the edge of the park. The music faded into the background, replaced by distant laughter and wind rustling through trees. Lily sat between them, happily focused on her cotton candy. Ava turned to Daniel. "Does it ever get easier?" she asked softly. "What?" "Being the strong one." Daniel leaned back slightly. "I don't think about it like that." "How do you think about it?" "I think about responsibility. And choice." He glanced at Lily. "Every day I choose to show up." Ava studied his profile. "You make it sound simple." "It's not," he admitted. "But it's necessary." There was silence for a moment. Comfortable. Ava hesitated before speaking again. "You know," she said lightly, "you're dangerous." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't sound good." "It is." "How?" "You make safe feel attractive." The words landed deeper than she realized. Daniel didn't respond immediately. Because no one had ever framed him that way before. He had been called dependable. Reliable. Responsible. But attractive? For being safe? That was new. He turned toward her fully now. "And that's dangerous?" he asked softly. "Yes," she said. "Because most of us don't realize that's what we need until we see it." Lily suddenly leaned against Ava's side, tired from the afternoon excitement. Without thinking, Ava wrapped an arm around her. Daniel watched the gesture carefully. It wasn't forced. It wasn't calculated. It was instinct. And something inside him shifted. Fear. Not of Ava. But of hope. Because hope meant possibility. And possibility meant risk. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in soft gold and pink, Daniel stood. "Come on, Peanut," he said gently. "Time to head home." Lily groaned but didn't argue. They walked toward the parking lot together. Halfway there, Ava slowed her steps. Daniel. He turned. Yeah? I'm not here for something casual, she said quietly. He appreciated the directness. Neither am I. I just need you to know that, she added. If this moves forward. I don't do halfway. Daniel held her gaze steadily. I don't either. The air between them felt heavier now. Not tense. Intentional. When they reached the car, Lily climbed into the back seat. Daniel stood by the open door, looking at Ava. So, he said softly. Same time next week. Ava smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. He hesitated. Then leaned in and kissed her cheek. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just real. And as Daniel drove away with Lily humming softly in the backseat, he realized something important. This wasn't infatuation. It wasn't adrenaline. It was alignment. And for the first time in years, the single dad who thought his story was already written was starting to imagine a new chapter. One where bold didn't mean reckless. It meant choosing courage. And choosing her. It didn't happen all at once. Love rarely does. It built itself quietly. Sunday breakfasts became a thing. Not officially planned. Not labeled. They just happened. Ava would show up around 9 with fresh orange juice or pastries from a bakery she insisted was life-changing. Lily would drag her to the kitchen to help make pancakes, which mostly meant spilling flour and laughing too loudly. Daniel would stand at the stove pretending he wasn't watching them. But he was. He noticed everything. The way Ava tied Lily's apron gently instead of doing it quickly. The way she listened fully to every dramatic retelling of second-grade playground politics. The way she never checked her phone when Lily was talking. It wasn't performative. It was instinct. And that scared him. Because instinct meant attachment. And attachment meant risk. One evening, after a long movie night on the couch, Lily fell asleep halfway through the film. Her head rested against Ava's shoulder, her small hand curled into the fabric of Ava's sweater. Daniel paused the movie. For a moment, neither of them moved. Ava looked down at Lily and smiled softly. She trusts easily when she feels safe, she whispered. Daniel swallowed. Yeah. He carefully scooped Lily into his arms. She stirred slightly but didn't wake. Ava walked beside him down the hallway as he carried his daughter to bed. The soft yellow glow of the bedside lamp illuminated Lily's peaceful face as Daniel tucked her in. He stood there a second longer than necessary. He always did. Ava watched quietly from the doorway. When they stepped back into the living room, the silence felt different. Heavier. The television screen remained frozen mid-scene, casting faint blue light across the room. You're scared, Ava said gently. Daniel didn't pretend not to understand. He leaned against the back of the couch, folding his arms loosely. I'm careful. That's not the same thing. He exhaled slowly. I can handle being hurt, he admitted. I've done it before. But I won't gamble with her heart. Ava stepped closer, but not too close. You think I would? No, he said quickly. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Daniel ran a hand through his hair, something he did when he was thinking. I'm saying I don't get to experiment with love anymore. If I let someone in, it has to be solid. Ava absorbed that. There was no accusation in his voice. Just responsibility. She walked toward the window, looking out at the quiet street below. I'm not here to replace anyone, she said softly. I'm not here to rush anything either. But I am here because I choose you. The word hung in the room. Choose. Daniel felt it land somewhere deep. She turned to face him. I'm not interested in temporary. I've done that already. I've tried convincing someone to want me fully. Her voice tightened slightly. I won't do that again. He stepped closer now. Close enough to see the faint shimmer in her eyes. You shouldn't have to. She gave a small, almost sad smile. Funny how we accept less than we deserve just because we're afraid of being alone. Daniel nodded slowly. Being alone is easier than being disappointed. Ava searched his face. And is that what you think this is going to be? I don't know, he answered honestly. The honesty didn't hurt. It grounded them. He reached up and gently brushed a strand of hair away from her face. I don't want to build something that cracks under pressure, he said quietly. I build things for a living. If the foundation's weak, the whole structure fails. Ava stepped even closer now. Then let's not rush the foundation. Their breathing felt louder in the quiet room. The city hummed faintly outside, but inside the apartment everything narrowed down to this moment. I need to know something, Daniel said softly. What? If this gets hard, if Lily gets attached, if life gets complicated, you don't walk away. Ava didn't hesitate. I don't walk away from things I choose. There it was again. Choose. Not convenience. Not chemistry. Choice. Daniel studied her face carefully, as if looking for cracks. For uncertainty. For doubt. He didn't find any. Instead, he saw steadiness. Vulnerability. Courage. The kind that doesn't shout. The kind that stays. He leaned in slowly. Not rushed. Not desperate. Just certain. When his lips met hers, it wasn't fireworks. It wasn't dramatic. It was grounding. Warm. Intentional. A kiss that said, I'm here. When they pulled apart, neither of them spoke for a moment. Ava rested her forehead lightly against his chest. Daniel wrapped his arms around her carefully, like he was holding something valuable. Because he was. You know what scares me most, he murmured. What? That this feels right. Ava smiled against him. Maybe right isn't something to fear. He thought about that. About how long he had convinced himself that love was a distraction. A liability. Something unstable. But standing there, holding a woman who had shown up consistently without pressure, without drama. It didn't feel unstable. It felt balanced. Later that night, after Ava left, Daniel stood in Lily's doorway again. She shifted slightly in her sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. He leaned against the frame, thinking. He had spent 5 years building a life that was safe. Predictable. Controlled. And now, something unexpected had stepped into it. Not chaotic. Not reckless. But alive. The next morning, Lily surprised him. Daddy? Yeah? Is Ava coming over again? Daniel smiled faintly. Do you want her to? Lily nodded without hesitation. She feels nice. Daniel swallowed gently. Nice. Simple word. Big meaning. He knelt to Lily's level. If she keeps coming around, it's because we both choose it. Okay? Lily tilted her head. Like picking your favorite ice cream. He laughed softly. Something like that. As he stood up, Daniel realized something important. This wasn't about falling fast. It wasn't about grand gestures. It was about showing up. Again. And again. And again. And for the first time since becoming a single father. Daniel wasn't just protecting his heart. He was opening it. Carefully. Intentionally. But genuinely. And somewhere across town, Ava sat on her couch replaying the night in her mind. The way he kissed her. The way he spoke about responsibility. The way he didn't promise perfection. Just effort. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was auditioning for love. She felt chosen. And that feeling? Was worth the risk. Some love stories explode. Theirs unfolded. Steady. Intentional. Built, not rushed. Months passed, and Ava didn't fade. She didn't pull away when things became real. She didn't disappear when life got busy or inconvenient. She showed up. To school recitals. To Sunday grocery runs. To random Tuesday nights when Daniel was exhausted and dinner became takeout on the living room floor. She learned Lily's favorite bedtime story. She learned Daniel's coffee order. She learned when to speak, and when to simply sit beside him in silence. And Daniel? Daniel noticed everything. He noticed that Ava never tried to compete with Lily's mother's memory. Never tried to force a title. Never tried to rush a future. She simply built one with them. Brick by brick. And one quiet Saturday afternoon, standing outside that same Brooklyn cafe where it all began, Daniel felt the weight of how far they'd come. The air felt familiar. Golden sunlight filtered through the trees just like it had that first day. Lily was chasing pigeons again. Somehow, that hadn't changed. Ava stood near the cafe window, checking her phone. The same spot. The same glow in her hair. Daniel watched her. And this time, he didn't look away when she caught him. She smirked. Slow. Playful. Enjoying the view, she asked, stepping toward him. The words hit differently now. He smiled. Every single day. There was laughter in her eyes, but also something deeper. Security. Time had done what grand gestures couldn't, it had proven them. Lily ran back toward them, slightly taller now, slightly louder, still the center of Daniel's world. But now Ava fit into that world like she had always belonged. Daniel looked at both of them standing in front of him. And something inside him settled completely. Not butterflies. Not nerves. Certainty. For years, he had convinced himself that his life was full enough. That love was a risk he couldn't afford. That being a single dad meant the romantic chapter of his story had quietly closed. But he had been wrong. Love hadn't been gone. It had simply been waiting for the right foundation. He reached into his coat pocket. The small velvet box felt heavier than it should have. Not because of doubt, but because of meaning. Ava noticed the shift in his posture. Daniel, she asked softly. Lily looked between them, curious. He stepped closer. I used to think, he began, voice calm but steady, that being a single dad meant my story was already written. Ava's expression changed. Softened. I thought love was something I had already tried and failed at. He swallowed gently. But then you walked up to me and asked if I was enjoying the view. A faint laugh escaped her through growing emotion. And I didn't realize at the time, he continued, that I wasn't just looking at someone beautiful. He looked at Lily. I was looking at someone brave enough to stay. The world around them seemed to quiet. Even the cafe chatter felt distant. You didn't rush us, he said. You didn't force anything. You chose us. Every day. Ava's eyes shimmered now. Daniel knelt. Right there on the sidewalk outside the cafe. Just like in the movies. But this wasn't a movie. It was earned. Lily gasped loudly. Oh my gosh. Daniel smiled up at Ava. I don't want temporary, he said. I don't want almost. I want built. I want steady. I want Sunday mornings and school recitals and hard days and laughter and all of it. He opened the ring box. The diamond caught the golden light. Ava, will you let us keep enjoying this view forever? For a second, she couldn't speak. The confident woman who had once smirked at him now stood with tears slipping down her cheeks. And she didn't hide them. Yes, she whispered. Then louder. Yes. Applause broke out around them. Strangers who had witnessed the moment clapped and smiled. Just like that first day when heads had turned. But this time, it wasn't surprise in the air. It was joy. Daniel stood, slipping the ring onto her finger with steady hands. Lily wrapped her arms around both of them at once. We're gonna be a real family, she asked. Daniel knelt to her level. "We already are," he said gently. Ava crouched beside them. "I'm not replacing anyone," she said softly to Lily. "I'm just adding more love." Lily nodded seriously. "That's good. Because Daddy needs help sometimes." They all laughed. And in that laughter was something powerful. Healing. Not from dramatic heartbreak, but from quiet loneliness. Later, as the sun dipped lower and the cafe lights flickered on, Daniel pulled Ava slightly aside. "You know what the boldest part of all this is?" he asked. "What?" "You walking up to a stranger and asking him if he was enjoying the view." She smiled. "I almost didn't." "What stopped you?" "I was tired of safe conversations that led nowhere," she admitted. "I figured I'd rather be bold than wonder." Daniel nodded slowly. "Turns out bold isn't about being loud." "No? It's about being honest." Ava looked at him, really looked at him, the man who had once believed love was no longer practical. And now stood in front of her choosing it. Every single day. "Enjoying the view," she teased one more time. Daniel wrapped an arm around her, pulling Lily close with the other. "I am," he said quietly. And he meant it. Not just the woman standing beside him. Not just the ring on her finger. But the life they had built. The life that proved something simple and powerful. Sometimes the strongest love isn't the one that sweeps you off your feet. It's the one that stands beside you. Steady. Present. Unmoving when things get hard. And as they walked away from the cafe together, three shadows stretching long across the Brooklyn sidewalk, Daniel realized something he wished he had known years ago. Being a single dad hadn't closed his story. It had prepared him for the right chapter. And sometimes, all it takes to change everything is the courage to ask. Enjoying the view.